have sexual relations
And
with
I
that
realized that this is something
Miss
he
Lewinsky.
is
We're not going to
inherent.
be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is BackFire.
Hey, Cleveland. Welcome to BackFire this morning. Hey, we got a full house this morning. Got John Stanberry, a well-known, versed doctor in town that speaks to the school boards when necessary. And we've got Mr. John Wolf, an ex-presidential candidate who likes to speak when it's necessary. And we got Mr. Andy Brown, a local attorney from downtown Cleveland, in here this morning to put us some comments. We're not sure if he's Republican or Democrat yet. We're still going to work on that just a little bit this morning. But welcome, everybody.
There are other choices.
There's other choices, independent, I guess.
Absolutely.
Reasonable people.
Reasonable people. All right. Hey, John.
So you are a Republican. That's right. That's exactly right.
Well, I guess we have to start out this morning. John Stanberry made the front page of our Cleveland Daily Banner. Hey.
There you go.
For standing up and speaking to the school board about this lunch program. Tell us what happened during that meeting, John.
Well, I mean, I just went in, I guess. They were very gracious. I appreciate them letting me come and put it on the agenda. And they had a real full plate. They were going through the new rules for next year and budgetary concerns. So it was very nice of them to let me come. They'd already made their decision and they listened, but I was actually probably asking way too much because I was asking them to look beyond the here and now and kind of look at a big picture and to do something that very few city and county governments ever do, and that's actually think about the larger future of our country. And they were just, in my opinion, they're blinded by the concept of free money, and they're allowing themselves to believe there's a such thing as free money. The fact of the matter is the money they're going to receive will either be printed in the basement of the Treasury or it will be borrowed from a Chinese banker.
Well, I think you just summed it up, John.
Well, I said that. You can read it in the story that when the kids graduate, you've fed them breakfast and lunch now for free, so hand them a diploma and hand them a coupon book for the loan from the Chinese banker that we borrowed the money from.
Well, so you don't think you got anywhere with them?
I think they were very cordial and they listened and they a lot of them I think agreed on this point and that point, but it's very difficult to turn down money that the federal government offers you. The problem is you're getting in bed with them. I told one of the school board members yesterday, and Andy can probably, or both of my friends can talk about this. In Medicaid and Medicare cases, for example, hospitals and nursing homes that go to court and say Medicaid and Medicare has been unfair to them or hasn't treated them correctly, federal judges routinely say, yeah, seems like this wasn't a good deal, but you know what? You got in bed with them. You signed up for the program. You take their money. They get to make the rules. And that's what will happen with this program.
Well, I think I just caught a glimpse of it on the nightly news last night that Mr. Obama's making a threat now to some of the schools that are not going to accept
Oklahoma. Arnie Duncan has effectively threatened the state of Oklahoma because they pulled out of the Common Core.
So basically he's going to make some threats to the schools. Was it over the lunch program?
What I was talking to them about is paying for lunch and dinner or breakfast and lunch for everybody. And so the point, and I told them on the front end, I said, look, I'm not talking about the kids that qualify for free and reduced lunch. I'm talking about the kids whose parents earn too much to qualify for free and reduced lunch. Yeah. And their idea is, and this was another thing, one of the school members said, well, when they're younger in elementary school, we have a higher percentage of people that participate in free and reduced lunch. And when we get up into junior high and high school, that percentage drops, and she felt like it was because those kids are embarrassed to sign up. Well, I asked her yesterday, I said, well, think about this. If I'm a parent and I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, I'm at the beginning of my working career, and I probably do qualify for free and reduced lunch. But by the time my kids are in junior high and high school, I've put in a dozen years at my workplace. I've gotten promotions. I've gotten pay raises. Maybe that percentage drops because people actually come up out of poverty and don't need it anymore.
Well, your minimum wage will come up too.
So ultimately,
Suspicion.
my point is we're $17 trillion in debt. This is not a priority to pay for breakfast and lunch for people who could pay themselves.
You know, Dobalt, John's got a good point. This is something we've been seeing a lot of, and the most recent one that I can remember that's of note here in Tennessee is with regard to the Race to the Top money that we applied for. There was $500 million that got sent to the state and then divvied out among the different communities, for different services associated with the federal education programs. And that's fine and dandy. And if you could just anticipate that money was coming all the time, which I'm not advocating that that's the best thing in the world, but if you could anticipate that it was going to be there, that'd be one thing. But this is the same deal where money's getting thrown at the school systems, and they can't anticipate it's going to be there every year. So what happens when the money goes away? I mean, what are the plans that are in place, and how can the school system negotiate the waters that they're going to have to face whenever that money's pulled away and all those kids can't eat?
Well,
again?
I asked that, and they just glibly said, "Well, we'll just drop the program."
Sure.
And then what do you tell the people that have gotten used to it?
Yeah, and then they get stuck in that little rut.
I heard, I read some of it, and it was talking about that they were afraid some of the people weren't signing up that needed to sign up just out of embarrassment or something like that. But
well, they said that, and I said, well, then why don't you take a rifle approach to that problem instead of a shotgun approach to everything else? And on top of that, if you make the argument that they need support for breakfast and lunch, guess what? They need clothes. They need haircuts. They need paper and pencils. Where do you draw the line?
Oh, or slippery slope.
No, but
what's wrong with helping kids? These kids' parents pay taxes too.
You mean the $200,000 a year plus people?
I'm sure that it's uniform in other
so
countries.
you're okay,
in
John.
Other countries, let me talk. You talked
John,
about
you know
this
what?
for a
You
long
said
time.
let me talk all last week, but you
no.
don't seem to give that same courtesy to
you
me.
just talk for 5 minutes. You're
Well,
filibustering on this issue. Other countries, they don't. Okay, other countries don't even question the idea of kids being fed at school. In this country, with people like the Tea Party people and Dr. John here, it's a radical concept. This country's gone drunk on American individualism. We help banks, the military, industrial look,
That's what built the country.
No, it didn't. The corporations
We discussed
did.
this last week. If
Indian
you're so
tea
happy
company,
with
look at the
Germany,
tea
move
company.
to Germany.
No,
Please
I
do.
like America, but
Please
that
move to
doesn't mean we
Germany.
can't borrow ideas.
Borrow ideas from the Europe that we've had to bail out
people,
twice now in the last century? We had to save them from destroying themselves in the last century?
Well, they had a couple of wars, but that was 70 years ago, if I remember.
Well, apparently you don't learn from history very well.
Well, that doesn't mean they don't do anything right. We fought more wars than anybody since 1787.
We're the most successful country in the history of the world.
That's not true. I don't think so. Not right now.
I'm sure you don't think so. You joined your president and moved to Germany.
No.
It may be hard for me to get a word in.
That's just Tea Party claptrap.
It
These are just sound bites taken off Sarah Palin's bad dream or something like that.
What this is your party actually criticizes the wealthy, and now you're advocating welfare for the wealthy.
No, it's not welfare for the wealthy if it's a uniform benefit, just like Social Security is. Other countries wouldn't even question it. When kids are at school, you feed them, and you socialize the cost of it through the tax system. That's what we always do.
So you're a socialist.
You're a socialist. Don't use the verb to a noun.
What's wrong with it? It's not a bad word. You just said you like socialism, which makes you a socialist.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, here's the difference. Here's the difference. I mean, I understand where everybody's coming from. I think everybody understands. But the issue is that we need to develop a plan that works within the resources we have, as opposed to relying on all this other stuff that's just going to get pumped into our system and pulled away at some point. We need to be thinking critically about how to get these kids food.
The kids that need it.
That's right. More jobs in this country, that would be the big
if your president
start.
would get out of office, we'd get more jobs.
No, he's done everything he could do.
Andy, let me tell you something I mentioned
Which
to
is
them.
nothing.
I said, when you talk about feeding the kids, what happens to the kids that really need it in the summer? I said, even if we're not going to go with my conservative idea of giving the money back in the form of tax cuts, even if we're going to spend the money, why not spend it in the summer on the kids that aren't in school, the kids that really do need it? Because we feed them during the year and then we just let them go hungry for 2 months.
And part of the philosophy there has to deal with teaching students that are hungry. I mean, you want to be able to maximize the time that they're in school, make sure that they're getting fed, make sure that they can learn, make sure they can progress.
But that's not a banker's child or a doctor's child or a lawyer's child. about.
Sure, and that may be the case, but that's the philosophy. But then I hear you, when you get into the summer, what are you going to do there?
Why
when
not
there's
take
all
the
these
money they're going to waste on the kids that
there's
could
no
pay their
answer
own
that I
way?
know of.
Let's just talk.
spend it on
Let's
the
talk
kids
about
that need it.
let's talk about the county school system here in Bradley. They just had a reduction of 8 teachers. Isn't that great?
Actually, no one lost their
$250,000
job. Those were all unfilled positions, and all of that money went back into the capital line item to help pay for the school that they're going to have to build.
Congratulations, county school system.
Excellent job on their part.
Well,
although you had 2 board members that voted against it.
And let me say this, and I'm not going to second guess what they're doing, because I think that Johnny McDaniel and the school board knows what they're doing. But to some extent, too, we start looking at these systems and these schools and what's going on, and we're meeting the bare minimum. We're not doing anything to look to how can we improve on the schools. I mean, we're at the BEP bottom when it comes to being able to get funding, being able to provide services within the schools. I'd like to see, and it'd be my position, that we need to start looking to allocating these funds and moving money towards things that will benefit children, as opposed to meeting the bare minimums to just leave it as it is.
I saw a bumper sticker the other day I really loved. I've got to get one and put Whoop on it, put our logo on it. It says, "The government is not your daddy's baby." What do you think?
I agree.
Mm-hmm. I think that'd be a
But
great
under
Whoop
socialism
bumper
that
sticker.
Mr. Wolf likes, the
no.
government is your daddy's baby.
I tell you what, buddy. I challenge you to a debate at Lee College, 3 hours. This stuff is just claptrapping. I mean, all you have is sound bites and things like that. The government always
No, all you
does
have
stuff.
is 100 years of failed socialist experiments. It's the
there's
most
not-
failed economic system
it's-
in the history
no,
of the
it's
world,
not.
and you people
Look,
can't turn loose of it
you
because
had
it gives
the Great
the elites
Depression,
power.
You had the Great the recession. You've had all sorts of
and they
recessions and
enacted
downturns
socialism
and things
under
like that.
FDR, and it failed.
No,
and I told you last week,
But you lied to
unemployment
the
was
people.
coming
You
down
lied to the people.
before FDR
You lied,
came in
you lied,
office.
you lied.
The
Let me
highest
give you
unemployment
statistics.
during
No.
FDR was during his program. It was actually
No.
6 and 7 years
No.
into FDR's
Look, you
program.
lied to the people.
I tell you what, John,
let
do
me
this for
talk.
me.
You
Go
quit
look it
lying.
up.
Quit
Go-
lying. Quit
John,
lying to the
go
people of
look
Cleveland.
up the Bureau of
I'm
Labor
going to offer to buy
Management.
two.
Look up
I've
the
already done it. I
unemployment
did it last
statistics.
night. You're a liar. You are a liar.
Now wait a minute.
Give it
Let's
to me
not
right
get.
now.
Let's
He
not
is
get
a
personal.
liar.
Give it to
About
me
what?
right now.
Because in 1932, the unemployment rate, as Hoover was leaving, was 23%. When FDR came in, it peaked at 25% in March of
coming down.
in 1933. And then by 1937, after all the programs that go into effect, the unemployment rate dropped to 12%. Then in 1937, when Roosevelt tried to pull a Hoover and started trying to balance the budget and restrict bank loans. Then the unemployment he did.
Well,
Why don't you read history? Hold it.
Wait a minute, I've got his. I've got his.
Balancing the budget is a bad thing, folks.
And then in 1941,
Oh my God, don't
when the
balance
war
the budget.
started, it went down to 11%.
We're trying to get over
during the Depression.
Tragedy.
Even
trying to
Milton
get-
Friedman says you don't balance the budget during the Depression. Come on.
Well,
He's to the right of Milton Friedman.
We're trying to get over Clinton's regime right now. Now we
Yeah,
got
but-
his wife to deal with.
And John, I
Well,
will
that's
tell
what
you
I'm
that
trying to do
Frank-
too. But I challenge you at Lee
Frank,
College. I'll
let
debate
me-
you for
let
3
me
hours and
challenge you to
expose these
something.
lies. I'll give you $500.
Now,
to
for
do
someone
it.
who wants to talk, you do a lot of talking.
Well-
Franklin Chansey and I have done this show for 2 years, and we get
but
into pretty good arguments. And I've never, and he's never
Uh-huh.
called either one of us a liar.
It's 'cause he-
So, well, I don't know what y'all do in Chattanooga, but we don't act like that in Cleveland.
Well, then quit lying.
But now wait a minute. Let's not call anybody a liar. We're
Well,
talking.
I tell you, I just quoted the government statistics.
Well, now wait a minute.
Well,
What if
I
he?
memorized them last night just for the show.
Oh, okay. Now he didn't call you a liar.
Well, it's because I tell the truth.
John, does
If
he
he
tell
wants
the
to, if he wants to
truth?
call me a liar, fine. Then we'll let the
no,
Bureau of
you know
Labor
what?
Statistics
My
bear the truth
idea
out.
of decency doesn't allow that, but I guess
Go
you and
ahead,
I have
do
a
it.
different standard of decency.
No, I mean this is important stuff.
Well,
I take
that
it,
may fly in
you know,
Chattanooga, but it's really not
what
too
people think
accepted up
about
here.
what people think about the New Deal and history and Franklin Roosevelt is too important to not to tell that have the
Try
truth.
reading
known.
Amity Shales and see what you think about it.
Let me ask you a question, John. Should Walmart be in New York City?
Well, yeah, they could employ thousands of people in New York City, but the socialist mayor doesn't want job employment.
Go ahead, John Wolf. You can answer it.
Explain that one.
The
to
mayor,
us.
the mayor's not a socialist. Let
Actually,
me tell
the
you,
mayor is an admitted socialist. He said he was a
a
socialist.
socialist is somebody who wants.
then
All
you
you
need
have
to
to do is
argue
go.
with the
Let's
mayor
go
of
down
New
to
York.
the Cleveland.
Argue with
let's
him
go
'cause that's
down-
what he calls himself.
No, let's go to the. Well, there's different shades of socialism.
Well,
like there's
argue with
different
him.
shades
Don't
of-
argue with me.
He's not a socialist. All you have to do is go down to the 5th grade library or the 5th grade class civics here at Bradley County. Socialism is this, and it's always been this. It's the government ownership of the means of production. Here we don't have that.
Socialism
Nobody
is
advocates that.
redistribution of the wealth.
No, it's not. A progressive income tax that Teddy Roosevelt wanted 100 years ago is not socialistic.
Well,
Teddy Roosevelt was not a
progressive
socialist.
as well.
He wasn't a socialist at all. And people, Ronald Reagan believed in a progressive
Well,
income tax
apparently,
system.
the
He's not a
founding
socialist
fathers
either.
didn't, because they specifically outlawed it, and you all had to cram through the 13th Amendment to get it done.
Well, that was after the country became industrialized and we had to fight wars overseas.
I mean, that was after we
because
had
of
become
technology
successful.
and everything
That was
else.
after the very founders' program was put into place and built the strongest, most powerful nation in the history of the world. Then we decided it was time
people
to change.
tried to change that in 1865, but Lincoln wouldn't let him.
No,
and then after that,
actually, the
we had
Supreme Court
industrious-
ruled it unconstitutional in 1898.
John Whoop, I want to ask you another question. Did President Obama break the law when he let loose the Taliban?
Well, what he need, the question is whether he consulted enough with Congress under the law to do that. Now, of course, the other side of that is that's an executive prerogative, since it involves the military, and he, as commander in chief, can make the ministerial decisions within the military without congressional approval. So you have a constitutional issue there.
But
what
it's
is
never
the
been
breadth
taken
of
to
the
court.
executive
But it was
power?
never
But now,
taken to court.
now it's gotten so bad he's blaming
John,
it on
you're
the
an
general.
attorney. You know that the White House never took it to court. They
That's
never
true. That's
challenged
true.
that law.
That's true.
So it's a
But
law
yeah,
on
it
the
could be
book, and he
challenged now.
violated it. And according to Dianne Feinstein, the chairman, the Democratic chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, he violated the law.
Well, I don't like a lot of the stuff Obama does. That's why I opposed him. That's why I put my money where my mouth was. Went out there to 5 states and got into the primaries and showed people what a different kind of Democrat could be.
Now, you said he was Obama was Republican.
Well, I said that last week, but I don't want to just start pounding all that again. But basically, because he did it when he came in. He did everything the bankers wanted him to do. He did everything the Pentagon wanted him to do. He expanded the wars. He expanded the bailouts. He put key Wall Street people in key positions in the White House. We went through that list last week. I mean, how is somebody a radical when they do everything the bankers and generals? That's part of the elite. That's part of the core power structure in any country. He followed their footsteps. He followed them step by step in every policy.
Is it still your turn? I said last week, the problem is not capitalism. The problem is crony capitalism. And the Democrats are really the specialists in crony capitalism. And that's what this guy got more off Wall Street in 2008 and in 2012 than either one of his opponents, while at the same time vilifying them as being the candidate of Wall Street.
In 2012,
he was a liar, and he took advantage of the people.
I knew some. Yeah, well, okay. I think that he is a faux populist. I agree with you to that extent. He tilted toward the people, but then he genuflected and bowed toward Wall Street and the Pentagon.
Now that you mentioned populist, talk about Hillary Clinton. She's going to be a populist, talking about how poor she was when she left the White House. She had an $8 million book deal. Her husband had gotten over $200,000 every year without any expenses. They had advances, they got loans, and she's whining and complaining, saying they just didn't know how they were going to make it. They had
houses.
2 mansion mortgages to pay, and she's claiming she's going to be a populist because she understands how people
Do you think
suffer.
she's just out of touch?
That certainly sounded like it, and that's why I'm thinking about. I've already talked to some people about possibly getting a grassroots campaign against her. I'm going to start an office here in Cleveland. The lease goes into effect June 23rd, right down by Steve Bebb's offices of all places. But I'm going to go ahead and start a anti-Hillary office, and we're going to recruit volunteers and staff it.
Her net worth is over $200 million. She gets $200,000 to give a speech to Goldman Sachs.
Of course, she was talking about how they were when they left the White House. But
it's my understanding that was in her book.
She got an $8 million advance on her book
when she left
the White House.
You can look at this reasonably and say, well, you come out of the White House and you got $12 million in debt. That's a lot to face. But to say that she understands what the common person's thinking about or what they're going through when she comes out and she's facing those odds is a little disingenuous, I think.
She never did. She never understood anything. She was born very well-to-do. Hugh Rodham, her dad, was extremely rich. I mean, she went to the best schools.
I think they paid off that $12 million probably in about 6 months, too.
They got a very suspicious loan from Terry McAuliffe, the new governor of Virginia, to buy one of their 2 mansions that they bought that year. And she had an $8 million advance on her book. Bill Clinton, since he's left office, he has received $16 million from the government. That's from the taxpayer.
No doubt. I mean, I'm with you guys on this one. I mean, she's a faux populist just like Obama. I mean, these people, these people have the Democratic Party absolutely bamboozled and fooled. And I'll tell you one thing too. A lot of it's identity politics. I mean, they were so anxious, I think, to have somebody in there that represented possibly a minority, that they basically gave up what their philosophy really was.
Yeah, but now they're heading down the same road to have a woman.
That's what I think too. I mean, I think people overlook, they overlook substance just for the idea of getting someone with a certain identity.
Well, here's what kills me about
into
the liberals,
office.
though.
That's not right. Now, you need to differentiate and be specific, because not all liberals, not all progressives, not all conservatives think the same.
Well, here's what kills me.
They call that hypostatization in law.
We say, we want a woman. We wanted the first minority president. Well, let me give you an example. Condoleezza Rice. I wouldn't have a problem in the world supporting her for president. But guess what? The liberals won't even let her speak to a graduating class.
Because she started an illegal war that cost us $3 trillion.
So did Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
they'll let her speak, won't they?
She voted for it, but she didn't originate it.
John, will they let her speak?
That's true.
So it's the hypocrisy. Look, I'm not arguing the base of their complaint. My point is, how can you criticize her but not criticize Hillary for exactly the same thing?
Well, she originated the war and helped start it. Of course, Hillary could have done
policy
more too.
To remove Saddam Hussein from power by force was Bill Clinton's formal policy out of the White House in 1998, which, by the way, Ted Kennedy took to the floor of the Senate and supported.
Well, that's different from trying to occupy a hostile country and attacking
by
it,
force,
and also starting to
U.S. policy
bomb
was
people,
to
to bomb neighborhoods, to bomb villages, kill 100,000. You killed 100,000 Iraqis.
Missiles that Obama's
you talk
100.
I know. I agree with you 100%.
Citizens now.
Yeah, I think there's been. I think he's overused the drone program. There's no question about it. I mean, both parties is like I'm saying. The Republicans, Democrats kind of merge on a lot of these issues. There's not that much difference.
Who's the Democrats? Who are they planning on running if Hillary has another concussion reaction or something?
Well, there's people around that would like to do it. I'd like to get in there and enter some of the primaries and be a viable candidate myself.
The answer is real
Joe
simple.
Biden.
They don't have anybody. That's their pony that they're going to ride, and if it doesn't play out, then that's what they're just going to deal with.
There's Joe Biden. There's the governor of Maryland. There's
they
other
don't have
people.
anybody that they can do.
Yeah.
Question is, what are the
Elizabeth
Republicans going
Warren,
to do? The Republican Party right now, I have grave concern over who we're going to be putting in a position to run for the White House. And this deal, what I'm sure we're going to get to with Eric Cantor, just speaks volumes to what this country's looking at right now and how we're going to move forward. I mean, we'll get to that, I'm sure, here in a minute. But
I was stunned by Eric Cantor's thing the other day. I mean, I had to look at the thing 3 times. That guy actually lost.
Big time. What do you think, John?
Well, I mean, I will tell you that people in D.C. and people in the circles up there were not that stunned. And you're going to hear talk about his immigration stance. You're going to hear talk about the Tea Party. It's none of that. The problem with Eric Cantor was his arrogance. He was running for Speaker of the House of Representatives. He was not focused on his constituents. There were inner circles of longtime supporters of his that actually defected because they said he's not taking care of business at home.
Well, it's a perfect example of just forget or biting the hand that feeds you. I mean, he completely forgot about his voters back home. The scary thing about it, well, I don't want to say scary necessarily, but the idea that he's a conservative guy. I mean, I don't think anybody. John Stansberry, I don't think would disagree if I said he was a smart conservative person, and quite frankly, rubbed a lot of people that would be considered more moderate wrongly just because he was so conservative. Then to think that somebody, quite frankly, far to his right has beat him and did it with $200,000 and him putting up
nobody really
$5.4
knows
million.
if this guy's far to his right. That's the way he's being characterized, but nobody really knows a lot about him. And his opponent in the Democratic side, they both teach at the same small liberal arts college. So you're going to have 2 professors from the same campus running against each other. Here's how I look at this, and maybe this is a overly idealistic view, but America, the idea that somebody is so brilliant and so talented that we can't afford to lose them is crap. This country was based on people coming up from the ground and going to D.C. and making good decisions. And a lot of us that believe in term limits think this is exactly the kind of thing that refreshes government periodically.
A new broom sweeps a cleaner floor.
Now, I like Cantor. I feel bad for him from a personal standpoint. Just it's hard to lose a race. But I will say, everything I heard was him and his top staff were extremely arrogant.
Oh yeah, and well, they had to be concerned too. You don't spend $5.4 million against a $200,000 candidate unless you are concerned. I think they were putting out those polls showing him up so far just merely because they understood that they were down. I mean, it was a misdirection approach. But the thing is, from a Republican who I consider myself to be, not Tea Party and fairly reasonable, I hope, but other people can probably disagree with that. But, the idea that the party continues to move farther to the right, assuming that the statements about this person who beat Cantor is correct, is troubling, because I don't see a lot of the, I hate to say mainstream, but the more moderate, middle-of-the-road type Republicans going farther right. And if we're talking about getting a Republican back in the White House, independents surely aren't going to go for a further right. And granted, this is just one district, congressional district, and that's not much. But if we see a trend like that, the Republican Party is going to have a really, really hard time. I mean, that's significant infighting. That's going to probably result in some issues when it comes to the president.
Here's my problem with this. When you talk about right and left, it depends on where the midline is.
Amen.
And I can tell you, as someone that's been involved in politics since the early 70s, I don't see the Republican Party having shifted to the right a whole lot. The problem is the midline has shifted to the left. When George McGovern writes an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal and says the Democrat Party has become too liberal, it's really liberal. When George McGovern thinks it's too liberal, it's pretty liberal.
Now, the Democrats that have gotten elected really up to Obama were Southern conservative Democrats like Carter and Clinton to some degree, who both promised balanced budgets. Carter increased the military. Carter had the capital gains taxes cut. These people were from the South and had broad bases, and Obama really was probably, compared to those two, more liberal. And even Kennedy and Johnson were basically conservative.
Obama is off the charts.
No, he's
liberal.
not. No, he does everything the bankers and generals tell him.
Now,
to.
look, I'm not disagreeing. I don't disagree with you that he's in bed with the bankers.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you about that.
He's
but
not,
as far as his policies, when you look at the EPA, when you look at how the Justice Department is being, this is a criminal enterprise at the Justice Department right now.
Well, that's just that's corruption possibly. But I mean, if you look at his education policy with Arnie Duncan, that's the same as Bush.
You mean threatening states when they don't do what the federal government wants them to?
Yeah, that's the matter of sovereignty. But he's basically taking up the anti-teacher.
To Arnie Duncan or Obama.
Yeah, you look at they've let the BP subsidiaries expand their drilling even after that disaster in April 2010. Sure, they have.
Almost all the federal
no, they
land.
haven't.
Production on federal land is down. John.
Everything is
production
up.
on
Immigration,
federal land.
deportations
production
are up.
on federal land is down.
Why is gas
Bush
up, John?
Huh?
Hey, why is gas up?
That's the irony too. I was thinking about that the other day and wanted to bring this into the studio. I mean, now we've got this so-called energy independence. We've got North Dakota, which has basically become a petro state. We have all sorts of drilling going on, and supposedly we're going to be energy independent in 2 or 3 years. But yet the gas prices at the pump are about $3.30 to $3.40 a gallon just for regular unleaded. So I thought when all this stuff was allowed to go and all this petro capital became unhinged, that we'd see some lower prices at the pump. But apparently it hasn't worked that way.
John Wolf, I think you need to get on a mission and go legally find out what's wrong with our fuel system. I think they are taking us for a ride.
Well, keep in mind that
Now,
Obama
you
wants
might find
this.
some real lawsuits right there.
But keep in mind Obama wants this. He gave an interview just last week where he says we have all kinds of reserves, but it needs to stay in the ground. He said if you enact my policies, your heating and cooling bills will necessarily skyrocket. That was his words. Necessarily skyrocket. He wants this because he wants us to live in mud huts according to the UN's sustainability goals.
Well, we're drilling all over the place, not obviously
on federal land.
Of course, you want to keep some
production on federal land has decreased under this president.
Now the corporations and their shills here are complaining, and for a century, they've been able to buy federal land for $2 an acre and drill, mine, graze on it, farm it, and everything else.
Land, John?
They did
What's
that
the constitutional justification for the federal land owning millions of acres?
They get stuff.
What's the constitutional justification for the federal government owning millions of acres of land?
We're supposed to pay the 7th Calvary.
What's
conquered
the
West. We conquered it with taxpayers' money.
justification?
It's always been federal
Where does
land.
the Constitution give the federal government the right to own millions of acres of
Anything
land?
necessary and proper to carry out the general
So owning
welfare.
land that
Look
just
at Article
sits there
1, Section 8.
unattached,
Of course the federal
unattended,
government has the right to own land. That's
no,
why
they
we had
don't.
Louisiana
No, actually,
Purchase.
they don't.
You're to the right of Thomas Jefferson.
Constitutionally, they
You know,
don't.
you'd like to burn down Monticello. Golly. What was wrong with him acquiring half of the United States for $2 billion? I think it was
Nothing.
a
And
pretty
then he
good
should
deal,
have
but that
sold
doesn't
it back
mean-
to the
Oh, then
people.
he's supposed to privatize it. Here
Yes,
we
he
go.
should have privatized it.
18th century
Absolutely.
privatization from
He should
Napoleon
have
to Jefferson
privatized.
to Enron. Oh,
He
or
should have
Adelphia,
privatized.
or some other fraudulent corporation. Oh, that's right, the ones that ruined the economy
Now, if
during
y'all
the
listen to this,
mid-2000s.
what John's telling
Yeah.
you is the government
let's do
can't
it.
trust you, the individual, to own anything.
We're not talking about individuals. Corporations are not individuals.
Yes,
I never
they
seen.
are. They're owned by individuals.
I never seen one walking down the street.
All right, the
Hey,
government is not your daddy's baby. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
You need money overnight? Check into cash. Your time is tight. .com. Bank account's too low? Check into cash. So where do you go? .com. Do it online in a record time. It's the easy way to get money next day. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. Just stay in the house, check into cash, and grab your mouse.com. Get your money online, check into cash, right on time.com. You can be sure it's secure from our bank straight to yours. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. No time to get away, check into cash. You gotta stay home.com. Hey, that's okay, check into cash. You can do it alone.com. Any old time, do it online. Just stay in the house and grab your mouse. Do a quick click from home. Get your money overnight at the right website. Do a quick click from home. Go to checkintocash.com.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic Surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions, also tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase. Rebel Drive-In Family Restaurant, the restaurant you grew up with here in Cleveland, Tennessee, located at 1010 South Lee Highway. Give them a call at 476-6373. They have a wonderful, huge breakfast, lunch, and dinner menu. It's the home of the famous Lotta Burger, and now a whole lot more. It's open every day except Monday. Yes, now even open on Sunday. Same menu, but new low prices. And don't forget, seniors, a discount on every Wednesday. Check out the home of the famous Lotta Burger and a whole lot more now at the Rebel Drive-In, 476-6373. Check out rebeldrivein.com. The Rebel Drive-In.
If you're looking for a home, apartment, or office space, Jones Properties provides residential and commercial properties in the heart of the Southeast that will fulfill any need. Plus, Jones Properties is one of the fastest growing firms in the area, which offers you more security. When you're ready for a home, apartment, or in need for commercial office space, it makes sense to call Jones Properties first at 472-4000. Plus, you can get additional information by logging on to the website at www.jonesproperties.biz. Jones Properties is also looking to invest in properties. So if you have a property that you need to sell, call the professional team at Jones Properties first. They'll help you find the perfect property for whatever your needs. Call today, 472-4000. And don't forget to keep up with Jones Properties on Facebook.
From chicken to cash, they're coming to town. Mighty Clydesdales of world renown. Such a rare sight, all black and white. Big excitement all around.
Check Into Cash, your one-stop money shop, introduces the Cashdales, our beautiful Clydesdale horses now touring the United States, representing our company heritage, appearing in parades, events, and visiting Check Into Cash locations.
2,000 pounds marching around, every hoofbeat shaking the ground. Tall as the sky, 18 hands high, they're gentle giants, so don't be shy.
Check Into Cash, now celebrating 20 years, is proud to present the beautiful Clydesdale horses. Visit cashdales.com for the upcoming schedule and more information.
Check Into Cash, they're on their way. The mighty Clydesdales will make your name.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back in the studio live with John Stanberry, John Wolf, and Andy Burke out of Chattanooga. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Brown. Andy Brown. Andy Brown. What would you like to say about Andy Burke this morning, John Wolf?
Well, I just say I don't know what to say because he doesn't know what to say. He never takes a stand on anything. He didn't back the workers or the management in the VW controversy, one of the biggest things that's happened to Chattanooga in the last 5 or 6 years. We don't know. We still don't know who Andy Burke is, other than a careerist who somebody who wants to be governor, and and he's trying to take the tried and true path. Patting kids on the head and saying I'm against crime, I'm for education. He has a few small programs there to bear that out. So that's the sort of thing, I don't know.
Now,
maybe he's trying to be the next Bill
Burke
Bredesen.
has big money connections up in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure he has higher
Oh, Lord, I don't want anybody else who's got any strings
John
to
may know more
Chicago.
about this. The family's from Chicago, are they not?
They may have been back 4 or 5 generations ago. And, he's got a lot of. He was. I think Obama was his teacher at the University of Chicago
wouldn't
Law
doubt
School.
it.
I'm not saying that. My point is, there's big money in the family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's not just local. This regional area. It's bigger than that.
All right. Here's a latest thing Mr. Obama did. I believe he came down with this one yesterday. Obama's acting. He's got his ink pen out again to ease student loan debt. What's your opinion on forgiving of student loans?
Well, you have to go on a case by case. I mean, it's harder to find jobs. You burden people with high interest rates. I mean, the banks are getting money from the Federal Reserve at 1/8 of 1%, and those same banks, I guess, or the government gets that, and then you turn it around and lend it to people for 8 or 9%. I think that's a little bit usurious, and probably we ought to we ought to make it easier for people to go to college. That's for sure. You know, because human capital is important, and we can't develop it if we keep charging.
How much college should they need before they're ready to go?
That's
some people are career.
Case.
Some people are just career college.
Yeah, but here's one of the problems. When you look at the spike in tuition costs over the last 20, 25 years, you can correlate that directly to the increase in the number of government programs that pay for college. Now, I'm not saying the government shouldn't help people, but what happens with these things is 25 years ago, if you wanted an engineering degree, you went to Tennessee Tech or you went to Georgia Tech. If you wanted an architecture degree, you went to whatever college specialized in that. When they started piling more and more federal money involved, all these colleges said, hey, we're not going to specialize in one or two areas. Hell, we're going to specialize in everything. And so the cost just skyrocketed.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, I think, but of course, there's such a premium put on having a degree and everything. It's no wonder that people don't try to get relatively
in
better.
Star Wars as literary culture.
Well, people are more drawn toward business now. I mean, there's people are trying to get practical skills and things like that. They've gone to a lot of these community colleges. Community colleges have grown. The idea of a college education and the reality of it have broadened over time, and that's what we're seeing. More and more people going going beyond high school to learn things, usually to get into the job market. There's very few people out there just trying to learn for learning's sake.
And, the president's not talking about completely eliminating the student loan debt. I mean, it's not just writing it off like it's a bad debt. I mean, what he's talking about doing is on a very limited basis just reducing the interest and reducing the payments so that some of these students can have more working capital to go off, or better yet, not students, but people in the workforce can have more working capital to go off, spend more, obviously, try to generate some income within the economy. And it may or may not be a good thing. I don't know. I mean, I know that a lot of my friends, and I'm quite frankly the youngest one here and probably closest to college, no doubt. But the issue with a lot of folks is that, when it comes to paying off student loans, that's a priority, and you don't have much for anything else. I mean, renting and having a family and all that stuff kind of gets put on the back burner, and it's just
Wendy,
difficult.
let me ask you a question. This is just philosophical, and I don't mean directly about your business, but I'm assuming you have people that owe you money at times. You do services, they owe you.
Absolutely.
How would you feel if the federal government just decided to step into your accounts receivable and said, you know what, we're just going to tell these people that owe you money they don't have to pay you back?
Sure, John.
Or they don't have to pay you back as much.
And quite frankly, my understanding of what the president is doing is he's talking about only the loans that are issued through the federal government.
But that's us too. That's the taxpayer.
Okay, well, if you want to look about taxpayers,
sure, but
they
owe us that money.
But it's still owed. It's still owed. It's not that it's not going to be paid back. It's still owed. We're just giving them a little bit of a cut in terms of what their monthly payments are, so that we can try to put it back into the economy.
It's going to be capped at 10%.
Yeah, and the government gets
of your earnings.
The government gets money at 1/8 of 1%, and people. I mean, the government gets money so cheap. I mean, this country still has lower interest rates on its debt, despite the $17 trillion debt that John mentioned. I mean, our government still pays lower interest rates than any other country except probably
as we speak, the
probably
Chinese
Germany
are trying to get the Fed or the world institutions to go off the dollar as a standard. If they go off the dollar as a standard, we will have an economic collapse we've never seen before.
Well, that would hurt China because their biggest consumer wouldn't have the money to pay for their goods.
That's the only thing that saves us is that we owe them so much money.
Yeah, we're intertwined.
We would default on debt to them.
Yeah, we're intertwined with them so closely that we're bound to have to work together toward common things.
On this student loan deal, they're expecting $7.6 billion to be the cost the first year, and the rest of the unknown. So again, we're getting into unknown costs.
Year after year, that might eventually add up to a little bit of money there.
You got to remember too, with the high unemployment rate, people coming out of college are going to have a lot of people to compete with, and there's downward pressure on wages with high unemployment. Plus with businesses being there not being as much economic growth, people just don't make as much money as they used to coming out of school. So they have less to earn to pay back.
Well, we've been in 5 years of this president's policies, and this is where we're sitting.
Well, we
I guess
avoided
it's still Bush's fault.
We avoided the Great Depression.
Think about that. Hey, folks, could have been worse. It's the worst recovery in the history of the world, but it could have been worse.
Well, it could have been a better recovery, and if we had spent more money on rebuilding infrastructure,
if we had cut taxes and got government out of the way.
No, we already cut taxes.
If we had cut tax, we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world.
The lowest effective. We have the lowest. There again, another one. If you have to look at the effective tax rate. Okay, it's not what's on paper. Okay, It's what the effective
John,
tax
how
rate
much
is on
tax
corporations.
is enough for you?
14%.
How much is enough for you?
There isn't any bright
At
line
what point
standard on
do
that.
taxes begin to
And
curtail
the
economic
ratio,
growth?
the ratio of taxes collected to GDP is at its lowest ratio since 1928.
But that's
and
a
the part
product
that
of
the
our
court,
productivity, and the productivity is actually hurting unemployment as well.
Yeah, productivity is high.
You're right.
People aren't even getting raises commensurate with the
You're
increase
right,
in productivity.
John, but guess what? Your
Because
policies
it's
have done
corporations.
that.
Now,
Because when the
unemployment
government
does that.
forces an employee to be more and more expensive, a company finds a way to avoid the employee, which is increased productivity and increased mechanization. So your very goody-good policies are the ones that are forcing people out of work.
No, mechanization happened as inevitable.
It happens
It's
because
been
you've made
happening since
employees too
1900.
expensive. Because you've made employees too expensive
because
and too complicated.
They can never be less expensive than the machinery.
Actually, that's not
that
true.
They don't have to
when
pay.
you get the EPA involved and you get the IRS involved and you get the Labor Department involved,
the IRS,
these companies don't want to fool with. If they build a machine, it's a capital investment.
The
and
IRS
it's done.
is as smallest as it's ever been. It's been cut back. It's been pared back relative to the economy. It's the smallest it's ever been.
Folks, there's
And
a Gestapo out there, but relative to the economy, it's not a big
It's not
deal.
a Gestapo. It's not a Gestapo.
Well, I think they got another $2 billion they just got, the IRS did.
They got thousands of new employees just to enforce Obamacare, which, by the way, I might mention, 4 million people of the sign-ups have problems with their applications and are probably not accepted. 4 million out of the 8 million.
I can't understand. It's like Hillary Care. It's too complicated.
Well,
they should have just gone to straight single payer like other countries.
All right, amen. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, 6%
You'll
payroll
agree
deduction.
that single payer is the way to go?
6%.
No.
We already had that with Medicare. 6% deduction.
How about
If
a 10%
you get
across
single
the board?
payer, the VA will be the guide.
How about a
for
single?
your
How about a
healthcare will
single?
go.
How about across the board 10% tax?
I would support a fair tax or a flat tax.
No, that's totally regressive.
Why?
Well, because you just like Roosevelt said, the more people have, the more they access the system, and the higher percentage of taxes they should pay.
Doesn't everybody have
even
the same?
Ronald Reagan thought that.
Doesn't everybody have the same access?
No, of course not.
They
I wasn't born like John D. Rockefeller V. I mean, we all have different
John
access.
D. Rockefeller
some
V
people are born
employed thousands of people. He
some
built
people
the
are born
country.
in midfield. Some people are born
Look,
already in the end zone.
you can be
and some
jealous of
people are
someone
out of
else's
the study.
success.
Nobody's
Where
jealous.
did John D. Rockefeller come from? Where did his money come from?
Well, he inherited
Nothing.
it.
No,
Yeah.
the first Rockefeller
Well, sure.
built a fortune, and he employed thousands of people, and he brought on the mechanization and the
cult of
industry
capital.
of America.
The cult of capital here. In other words, if somebody succeeds, crown him
Well,
as their
actually,
King George
if you
IV.
really want to
Let him
talk
do
about
anything.
it,
Don't
no.
tax them.
Guess
Well,
what?
let me-
We've got
wait a
all
minute.
kinds
No,
of millionaires that went broke.
Let me ask
That's
you
not
something, John Will.
Nobody believes that.
Mr. Obama keeps coming out with this issue now that he's wanting to put more taxes on jobs to help create more jobs. And I heard you talk about, construction jobs and all these other jobs. Mm-hmm. Could you not just offer the entire country, the employers that have employees working for them now, a tax break to hire more employees?
Well, every employee,
now then, that way we wouldn't have to come out with any more money. The employers that have jobs available would get a tax break for putting these people in place, and immediately we'd see some quick growth. Wouldn't that be the fastest, easiest, cheapest way to produce some new jobs?
The liberals don't like it.
No, nobody wants to necessarily empower government.
Of
and
course
there's
they do.
already all kinds of tax credits out there, and
Obama's a
every time you
multimillionaire
pay
and he's
somebody,
never created
every time you
anything.
pay
It's all
somebody,
off the
you
government.
always get a tax deduction.
And it's
there's
just another
tax credits for hiring different sorts of people.
Just
so,
giving a tax credit across the board is just another Band-Aid, though. I mean, there needs to be a complete reform of the tax code. I mean, that's the only answer.
You're
Just
right.
reform it. Let's get rid of it.
Well,
let's have a flat tax.
However you want to look at it, but the idea that we're going to just give a credit to people to hire more people, I mean, that's just setting people up for failure. You take the people on, then you raise the taxes again, or you take away the credit. I mean, that's a bad scenario to
John,
get into. I think.
let me
we
give
need
you
to
a perfect-
rebuild the United States infrastructure.
Let me give you a perfect local example. You talk about Rockefeller. No, he's a bad guy.
No.
We've got a guy, we're sitting in his businesses right now, Alan Jones. Alan Jones built himself up, became successful, and what did he do this last week? He bought a failing company in town because he didn't want those people to lose their jobs. He bought it. He's going to invest all kinds of money in it because he wants to save jobs in America. He wants to save people's lives. That's what people do with capital.
We act like business is a victim. Right now,
business
the stock
is a
market,
victim of the
there's
government.
$2 trillion in profits on the sidelines that they're in the capital accumulated earnings
You're
in this
gonna force
country.
them to spend
okay,
it?
you've got a stock market.
You're going to force them to spend
every
it?
day it reaches
Do you
new highs.
really want a government powerful enough to force them to spend it?
Nobody has said that.
Well, then what's your solution?
I'm telling you what the
You're
issues are.
complaining, but you don't have a
No, I'm
solution.
telling you the rich are not victims. They've never been richer.
The
top
rich aren't calling
1% have
themselves
never
victims until the
owned-
government attacks
no,
them.
The top 1% have never owned a greater percentage of the wealth. The top fifth in this
Who
country.
is the top 1%?
The top 1/5
Who are the top?
own 90% of
Who
the
are they,
financial
John?
assets of this
Who
country.
are they?
They're
Are they
people
the
who
same
have
people
inherited
every
wealth.
year?
It's like the Walton.
Are they the same people
well,
every
sure,
year?
Ask the Walton
There's
family.
a couple of them
ask
that are
the
staying,
Gates
but guess what?
family. They're legacies. A lot of them are legacies.
80% of all the millionaires in our country are first-generation millionaires. 80%.
Well, good for them. They have
That's
the lowest
what
taxes in the West.
capitalism does.
That's how they became that way, because the taxes are
That
low.
means that-
because government didn't
that means
confiscate them.
people have
They
a
borrowed
chance to
technology
become wealthy.
they borrowed technology from NASA.
Your policies
They borrowed
will
the
destroy
medical
people's
people. No,
avenue
they
to
don't.
become
because
wealthy.
these people became wealthy because America
They
creates that
became
kind of
wealthy
wealth.
because the government was
we
out of the way.
subsidized them with military spending. We subsidize them. We build the infrastructure for them. We protect their wealth. We give them judicial protection. We give them police protection.
Are you saying-
we protect the resources around the world with
wait a
the
minute.
Pentagon?
Are you
we
saying-
have set this country up for
Are
people
you
to
saying-
be successful.
are you saying-
this country does not work against the
Are
rich.
you
It
saying
never
that they
has.
didn't create their own?
No,
Is that what
of course
Mr.
they
Obama?
didn't do it. They didn't create all their own.
Mr. Obama was saying
No.
that
Bill Gates. A lot of the technology Bill Gates used was developed by NASA, and that's that's
Bill
that's
Gates is a
given.
thief. He stole it.
No, it's okay to develop stuff that the government did.
Is it okay for Bill
That's
Gates
fine.
to get involved in the school systems now
Well,
on
it
this
was
Common
okay
Core?
when Bill Gates gave $2 billion to 3 school systems to build more classrooms. But 10 years later, when he looked at the results and said, hey, smaller classrooms don't really result in better results, then he got vilified and actually got death threats from the very same groups.
You know what I hear business say? You know, business says this. Business says we want something to happen. And right now, business never sees anything happening. They want I talk to people all the time that say, if I could just get a little bit, I don't want it all right now. Just give me something so that I can try to reinvest, so that I can try to run my business. That's what they want. That's the stuff that we need to work towards. That's the stuff government needs to be doing, is giving them at least something that they can work off of, instead of maintaining this stagnant economy, the stagnant policies that don't drive any type of growth in business. It just, something's got to change.
But the S&P 500 are making record profits. I mean, obviously, in this so-called terrible Obama
Small
era of bad
businesses
economy,
can't do
okay,
it,
but
though.
that's because the government doesn't give them enough capital. Now, there's you hit
It's
on
not
a
the
point.
government.
The
It's-
Federal
market-
Reserve, if the Federal Reserve can give the government money, or the government can borrow money at 0.5% or whatever, and get it out to
John,
the
most
banks at 1.5%,
conservatives didn't
then
like the
why
creation of the
can't
Federal
small
Reserve in the
businesses?
first
Wait a
place?
minute. Well, then my question is, why can't small businesses access that same money from the Federal Reserve at 3 or 4%? Why is the rule that all the money has to flow straight from the Federal Reserve into the biggest
first
banks
off,
of the
if you're
country?
gonna go
Which
that-
you last week had
John,
said
if you're going to do
had
that,
63%
explain to me
of
the
banking business.
constitutional justification for the Federal Reserve.
Well, obviously, the government and money under the Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, the government must do or can do what is necessary and proper for the general
who is
welfare.
the Federal Reserve?
The stock market's
it's the
always
United
going to
States
do well.
taxpayers.
The stock market's always going to do well as long as our government keeps printing money.
Well, that's
Remember.
no, because the goods are the productivity and the goods in circulation. There's no inflation or anything like that, because America is so productive and there's so much out there that there's not enough money right now chasing the number of goods that are out there. If anything, we have sort of a deflationary effect in some respects.
All right, we've got a guest came into the studio this morning. Let's see, State Trooper Cameron.
Yes, sir, Anthony Cameron.
John Stanberry invited him to come by this morning. That's quite all right. We always like to have an open mic around here, and you had something you want to talk about. So
I'm not. It's very exciting in this room.
we needed just a couple of minutes of rest.
I see that, and I'm wondering, you guys going to let him talk any? That's what I'm wondering.
No, there sure aren't. That's right.
Well,
I'm glad you're carrying a gun.
Yes, sir. It's not loaded. Don't you worry. I had to unload it coming in. Hey, the reason why I'm here, and I really appreciate you guys giving me time, just a few seconds. The Tennessee Highway Patrol, every summer we try to prevent crashes, accidents, somehow, some way, because, of course, people are there's more traffic on the roadways in the summertime. Kids are out of school. People going on vacation. So they have campaigns they put on. And I was talking to the doctor here about coming in just for a second to tell you about our Drive to Zero. The Colonel has given me a piece of paper here for public service announcement to read to you guys. And if I could, I'd like to read it just on his behalf and be done with this. And if y'all have any questions, you can ask. If not, I'll be on my way to go make some friends today if I can. Like I said, I'm Trooper Anthony Cameron. In Tennessee Highway Patrol, our number one goal was to save lives on Tennessee roadways throughout the year, especially during the busy summer travel months. Unrestrained vehicle occupants make up a significant portion of our state's traffic fatalities. So protect yourself by fastening your seatbelt every time and all the time. And, of course, this message is brought to you by the Tennessee Highway Patrol's Drive to Zero Fatalities campaign. So I appreciate it. That's all I need.
So, in other words, you came in here to tell us to fasten our seatbelt?
Listen, you better put your seatbelt on. That's all I got to say.
Well, let me say this. I've got a pickup truck I drive, and I've never unhooked that little bell, that whistle that makes me buckle my seatbelt, because I knew if I ever did, I'd get a ticket.
Yes, sir. Yes, you sure will. I promise you that. I promise you that. It's this is just a campaign they put on. You'll see different campaigns Highway Patrol put on, such as the Move Over. It seemed like that's a huge Twitter thing, the hashtag Move Over law they've got. It's everywhere. Seatbelts. I mean, we put on checkpoints just for safety restraints, just for seatbelts. So,
Trooper Cameron, you need to just watch out for Doughball. He's texting all the time and driving. Is what it is.
Yeah,
He's speeding and texting. That's what he does.
What truck do you drive again?
It's a white Ford pickup.
I bet it is.
Hey, Trooper, as long as we've got you here, let me ask you a question. How is it that people have lost the concept on the interstate system that the left lane is a passing lane?
Amen to that.
I have no clue. I'll tell you a quick story. Yesterday morning, we had a driver had the audacity to pass on the right. Not only pass, but this story comes from another trooper. Passed a trooper, and of course we've got to obey the speed limit, even in our patrol cars. And I believe he was actually a little above the speed limit himself and passed the trooper. So I don't know what this guy was thinking, but I'm like you. I have no clue what has happened and what they're even thinking nowadays. So
well, they get in that lane, and a lot of times they'll get beside a truck that can't move fast enough, and you'll have 20 cars lined up, and that's a real traffic. That's where your wrecks. For me,
yes, sir.
That makes me nervous as can be to be bumper to bumper on the interstate.
Well, when I was in Europe, I traveled down the Autobahn. There were signs up said stay in the right lane except when passing. It's a violation not to do that.
Yeah.
I wish that you'd pull these people over that are sitting there just running 5 miles less than the speed limit in the left lane, backing traffic up.
Well, let me just
pull them over and say, listen, a polite way to drive is get over.
Now, my Nana doesn't need to be pulled over that much, though, Ball.
Well, most of them
just tell Nana to get in the right lane.
Most of them don't know. These kids don't know. They ain't never been taught that.
Tennessee Code Annotated has a law that says drive right except to pass, and we do enforce that.
Good.
Just to make you have a better morning. I promise you, we enforce that.
Why don't we put up a couple of signs on the interstate?
Let's do it.
I think that'd be great.
Okay, I'll see if I can push that for you.
Get Brushy Mountain to print some new signs.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming in here.
Yes, sir. Y'all going to be okay now?
I think we'll be all right.
Okay. All right. If y'all need me, holler.
You can. You might want to hang around. We might need some protection here.
I hear you. Thank you, guys.
All right. We're coming up to our final moment. I'm going to give each of you guys one last opportunity to spout off one last thing. Give you about 1 minute each here, and that'll run us 3 minutes late, okay? John, Sandberry, I'll let you take the lead.
Well, I'd just like to start with congratulating 2 of our Miss America pageants. Our winner had the audacity to suggest that one way to combat rape is for women to learn to defend themselves. She is a black belt in Taekwondo, and the liberal women have attacked her for the idea that being able to defend yourself is a good idea. One of the editors of Cosmopolitan said it was icky. The idea of self-defense was icky. The other one is actually a much more serious. Miss Pennsylvania told the story of how she was conceived in rape, and her mother she hid the pregnancy from their family and was going to put her up for adoption, and her grandmother said, no, God has a plan for everyone. Everyone has a purpose in life, and I think it reaffirms the value of human life. So I'm very proud of both of these young women.
Good. John Wolf.
Well, I'd like to talk about the business climate, and I think it's very much pro-business. Wanted to clear some stuff up. We have a 20% record low almost tax on dividends in this country, only a 20% capital gains tax. That's what the cap is, regardless of how much you make. There's tax havens everywhere. The government pretty much lets you take your money and hide it wherever you might want to take it. As far as the effective capital or corporate tax rate, it's the lowest probably of all the Western countries. It's actually about 14% because they don't pay anywhere near the maximum rate of 35%. The amount of money the rich pay relative to the gross domestic product is the lowest percentage ratio ever.
50% not enough?
No, about 14%. The same is true, with corporate taxes. And corporate earnings have never been higher. Shareholder returns never been higher. The problem is that small and medium-sized businesses aren't getting the right capital because the Federal Reserve only lends to the big banks that were bailed out that are failures or were failures. They basically have capitalized failure more, and they've ignored the needs of Main Street, and they need to have a Federal Reserve program set up that goes directly to smaller and medium-sized banks and smaller and medium-sized towns to create available capital for people who want to work so we can get these student loans paid back and get the economy going again. Plus, lastly, I'll say we need a $1 trillion infrastructure rebuilding program. We're way behind Western Europe and China in a lot of the ways that our infrastructure is set up, and we need to change that, and that, too, will create economic growth. That's what we can do. Create capital, create better infrastructure.
From now on, can I have a John Wolf minute when I get a minute?
Well, I'm going to be short, so we'll make up for John going long.
Yeah.
I just want to thank everybody, Doughball, for letting me come on. This is always a lot of fun. I don't get to do it very much, but I haven't come up with anything to say. But the biggest thing I'll point out today is that we live in a great community. To our sponsor, Jones Management, and all that group, the fact that Alan Jones is being adventurous enough to save a failing business and provide jobs in this community and probably additional jobs to what we already have is a great thing. And we just he gets a bad rap sometimes, but he really has stepped up to the plate in this regard to try to make sure that Hardwick Close continues on. So we just thank you to him, thank you to you guys, and have a good day.
Thank you. All right, I want to say one last time, the government is not your daddy's baby. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.
Good morning, Vietnam! From checking to cash, they're coming to town. Mighty Clydesdales of world renown. Such a rare sight, all black and white. Big excitement all around.
Check Into Cash, your one-stop money shop, introduces the Cashdales, our beautiful Clydesdale horses now touring the United States, representing our company heritage, appearing in